Okay.
I just wanted to repeat, I'm sorry that I apologize. There were some attendees, and I just wanted to let the attendees know that Laura just read the governor's order at the beginning of the meeting, called the meeting to order at 6:33. I hadn't remembered to start sharing the meeting yet. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. And now I'll just do the roll call, establish the quorum. Heather Highmark.
Here.
And Andrew Lau. Yeah.
He is actually no longer here, and I made a mistake on the agenda. I should have crossed. Arn is here in his place today.
Lauren?
Arn.
Arn. Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't realize that. Yeah. And I always use the stationery to take attendance. Okay. Is Tatiana Shannon? Okay. Christina Kennedy? Is she still with the committee?
Here.
I'm here.
Oh gosh, you're right there. Okay. Sorry. And Eleanor?
Here.
And is Alan Bingham here?
He is away.
Okay. So not joining at all tonight. Okay. And Jahan Habib?
Here.
And Rose White?
She's going to be late today.
Okay. All right then. We will start with asking for public comments. If there's anybody else, because I don't trust the view here. I'm going to open the meeting for public comment now. We'll do it again later in case the folks filter in toward the end. But I don't believe there's anybody from the public. So I am going to move on to the approval of the minutes. And ask if people had questions or comments. They were it was one document with 2 months of minutes because we had that impromptu August meeting that we weren't going to have but then held. And so Roberta kindly bundled it all into one document. And so now is the time if you had anything you wanted to change or note.
I had 2 small more like typo corrections, and then one correction that maybe it's more on substance. So on the July minutes, agenda item number 3B, the spelling of the word pursuing was misspelled. And then just, this is so minor, on items F and G, also in agenda 3, the project names are not underlined, but all the other ones are underlined. It's minor. And then under agenda item number 6, perhaps I would like to add, I think, well, okay, I'll summarize, I'll save my comment and then we'll find the language. I felt like there was a lot of discussion and work that Roberta presented to the committee that we were all very thankful for. And I felt that the minutes should actually reflect our sort of kudos and compliments to her on moving in and picking up the ball so quickly and paying attention to things. So I was thinking perhaps the language of the committee complimented Roberta Cameron for her work, including the focus and initiative regarding the evaluation forms and community outreach. So I guess I'm making a motion to add that to the minutes.
That sounds good. Roberta probably didn't want to compliment herself too much, so.
Yeah, that can be hard sometimes for people.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, do we have to formally approve that, or can we just give you the go ahead to add that, Roberta?
You can just say to approve the minutes as amended.
Okay. The only other, I will just add one really small typo, which is on page 3 of the July minutes, item G. Member Bingham described the building, it should say as remarkable, not is remarkable, really minor. And So I would suggest that, and then somebody, not me, has to make a motion to accept those amendments.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
And all second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see who seconded.
Christina.
Thank you.
Okay. So now I have to roll call it. Okay. Eleanor
Yes.
and Jahan
Yes.
and Rose is not here yet. Arne, are you going to be voting then?
No.
Okay. Okay. And so you're on board with this, yeah?
Sorry, I had my microphone up. I am sitting in for Andrew as a representative of Public Face Urban Forestry. I am not appointed to the CPC, so I believe that I have voting power as a temporary person, with the idea that when the CPC hires additional staff, that person will take my place. So I believe I can vote. Roberta, do you have any sense of that? In any case, I do approve.
I think you can vote, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So I think that means motion passed. That's what that means.
Tatiana here. I just joined. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
technical issues, but now I'm here to. Yes, hello.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you for piping up because I couldn't tell what I want to go to. Okay. Then I think we should move. We can move on now to the application review.
I
And
would just note, I guess there was no comments on the August minutes. I had no comments on the August minutes.
yeah, I'm sorry. I thought we were doing all at once. Sorry. Any other comments on any minutes? In my mind, I bundled them together.
All right, so I guess we'll just approve the August minutes as they are.
As they are, yeah. I think the only comments that came up were July.
So I make that motion.
All second. This is Christina.
Thank you. Okay. There's Tatiana. Okay. We're voting to approve August minutes now.
Yes, no, sorry, I as well. I thought we were in a line. I didn't realize. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
good.
And Eleanor,
Yes.
Jahan,
Yes.
and Rose is here, and Arm.
Yes.
Okay. My apologies. I bundled them. So now we will move on to the application review. And Roberta, are you going to share those with us?
If you would like me to, just one moment. I need to bring it up.
I mean, perhaps, yeah, I personally, I kind of like it. I keep it up on my own screen. There's also
Yeah.
that little cheat sheet that is handy too. I'm not saying you should share it. I'm just reminding people this is another document that's might be useful to refer to as we're talking.
So which document would you like me to bring up first?
How about if we go through them in order, the order that they're on the agenda? So first, let's do land acquisition fund.
Okay.
Yes, can I just bring up a point of order? I just as a point of clarification, just received a text from Louisa, who is, I believe you're at least listening in.
Yes.
What my understanding is that since the mayor has not appointed me to the CPC, that I am not a voting member.
Okay.
All right.
I'm so sorry. Can you say that again? I didn't quite follow.
Because I have not been officially appointed to the CPC, I cannot be a voting member.
Oh, okay.
Thank you
Okay,
for
thank
that
you. So I'll
clarification.
stop asking for that. Got it. Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I am looking to see if I can figure out how to share. Share screen. Wait, that's not showing the right screen, is it? I'm gonna stop that. Figure this out. I've done it before, I could do it again.
Your screen is up.
You can still see my screen?
You can see your screen, or I can see a screen. It's just the top document is just a list, and it looks like there's an application underneath it.
There you go.
This
There
is
you
the
go.
one
You
I'm
just
trying to show. So you can see the funding, the land acquisition fund application.
Yeah, we can. If you could make it full screen.
Okay, I will try.
And this is basically just to establish a pot of money, right, for just to have us at the ready, basically, when opportunities arise, is my understanding. Am I getting that right?
Yes, I believe
That was my understanding as well.
Okay.
yeah. And just to reiterate, the purpose of the discussion this evening is to just kind of for you to have a preliminary discussion and review. The applicant themselves will have the opportunity to present and answer questions in depth at your next meeting.
Okay.
So we had some questions about this previously, which was, are there any other funds or sources that can feed into this acquisition fund? And I think it was noted on the summary that that hadn't been addressed yet. I would continue to encourage them to answer that question.
Yeah, I think the point is though to have a ready source that's available for future purchases, say when another grant becomes available. So it's you know, I think it is the source of funding that will then be able to be leveraged with other funds in the future for opportunities that come up. I'll just say from the Conservation Commission's perspective, we would really support this. And I was really pleased to see that they asked for a lot more than last year. So I'd really support fully funding that.
Oh, I do too.
Tatiana,
And we don't need to vote tonight. I think it's a strong application and a good use. I just feel like when the CPC has a question that they forward to an applicant, that it would behoove them to attempt to answer it.
Tatiana here, that's fair. Also, I would point out that grants aren't the only source of funding. Aside from city and public funding, do they have somebody on hand for development purposes, for private fundraising amongst amongst businesses or individuals with, and deep pockets is kind of a crass way to put it, but do they have somebody like that who can do fundraising with private individuals? Do they have somebody who can jump on grants to leverage the money we're giving them, so that when it's time to apply for grants, they've got somebody with the experience and background to write an effective grant application? I think those are reasonable questions to ask. What's the plan aside from us giving them money? I still think we should vote. I think it's a very strong application. What's the plan aside from the CPC giving them money?
Were you raising your hand?
I was, sorry.
Okay.
So I wanted to answer both of those questions. So Heather, your question was, is there any other source of money? And the answer to that is yes, in the sense that the new zoning creates payment in lieu. And so that is if under certain circumstances, a developer can pay money instead of creating open space where it's very small areas or areas that are not appropriate for open space. That money could be used for acquisition. And then the second question that Tatiana asked about a grant writer, we do have a grant writing office. They're super successful in writing grants. They can write grants to help get money. The park program, which is parkland and recreation for the community program, a state program, gives money that can be used for acquisition. So yes, and we actively go for those. We just won one this year, which you'll hear about in a little bit. And do we have a development person? We have spoken about this in our economic development real estate, but beyond getting, I believe it was an appraiser, we have not yet, we don't have anybody who's like actively looking for real estate, which may be the missing link. But we do have an economic development department, which with some expertise in real estate.
Cool, thanks. That it's good that, you know, that's really what I wanted to know. Thank you.
You guys, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Sorry, that go to bounce me out of the meeting for a couple of minutes, so I'm back. Sorry, I missed you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the land acquisition fund application? Okay, and it's,
I would only say that I'm not quite sure what people have said so far, but I think that this is a really good use of CPC, CPA funds. It's been successful in the past. I mean, land acquisition projects are one of the things that the ability to purchase land, open space when the city needs to it would be, I would think, one of the CPAs, CPCs, you know, best abilities and the best use of funds. Where people are constantly talking about the need to acquire more open space, and this is a tool that would help us to leverage those funds, whether it's using all CPC funds or to leverage other grants.
And there were just 2 questions asked. It's Louisa, and I stepped in and answered them, so no problem.
Super, thank you.
I would just I'll call myself for a moment. I would second what Christina said, that I'm glad the money went up. On the one hand, I definitely am glad. I find it a little tricky because I also know that that's a very, while it's a much larger figure, it's a very small figure when you think about what the cost of land is in Somerville, right? But you don't want to tie up too much. So I think it's a good balance. I'm glad to see it, and I'm also really glad to hear that there's other sources of funding being sought after. And some, you know, development people thinking about it. And now, as Heather pointed out, we're not voting on these. I will just restate that, confirm that with you, Roberta, right? We're just reviewing?
Correct. We're not voting on them. And actually, the next meeting is when we're formally having presentations and Q&A. So the purpose of this evening is really just to make sure that the applicants are prepared to answer the questions at the next meeting if we raise questions that are going to require any additional preparations, so that the applicants will, you know, have the chance to provide all of the information that you're looking for at the kind of the culminating meeting of your review, which is next month.
Got it. Okay. So if there are no further comments or questions, I'd say we move on to, I'm just going to go through them in order on the agenda. The Glen Park Community Garden application.
Let me know if you want me to share them, or if you, if that's not necessary, I'm fine not sharing it as well.
Roberta, I think it's helpful if you do share, even if just the front page that has the name with the request.
Got it. I thought I had it open. Nope, not yet.
You just had it a second ago. It was just there.
That wasn't actually it. There it is. I already thought I had it, but I didn't. There you go.
Okay. So this is also the public space and open forestry folks putting it forward, yeah?
Public space, urban forestry, peace out.
Oh, those acronyms. I struggle with them. Okay. The Glen Park Community Extension, right?
So this is a great example of what we were just talking about. We are applying for these funds to expand the existing community gardens at Glen Park. This property, which was 5 Palmer Street, was purchased with CPA funds several years ago. And so it was this purchase which allowed us to acquire this land to expand the amount of open space in the city and in this neighborhood in particular. The Glen Park Community Garden has, well, the community gardens in general have a waiting list. The Glen Park Garden is very successful. This is right in line with the uses that the CPC talked about at the time that they were voting to approve the funding for the acquisition. So I think it's very much in line with what the CPC intended. If you scroll through this application, you'll see the graphics that show the exact space that we're talking about, shows the house location and that sort of thing. And so I believe you each have a copy of the application, so you should be able to do that.
Yeah, we do. We do. You're right.
I have a question, actually. Do you typically have, when you have the applicant presentations, do the applicants typically prepare actual presentations with a set of slides? Are there parameters around that when you have your October meeting?
Roberta, it's Louisa again. Yes.
Okay.
In the past, they have done a quick, like, 5-minute presentation, and it's usually open to the public, which I had just sent you an email. We need to get the word out on that. And the applicant presents for 5 minutes. Then I believe the committee has to set these times. Then they have maybe 5 minutes for a discussion and question. And then there usually is some kind of like ranking by the public. In the
sticky dots kind of thing. You know, like a chart in the back, and then put your sticky dots where you see fit for anybody in the room. It's kind of how it's gone in the past.
Exactly, that's right. And I think that it often depends upon the number of requests that you have in front of you.
Yeah. That's perhaps something that we ought to discuss after we go through these, is what your process is going to be, because I have the feeling that however many people we are able to bring to the meeting, it's not going to be a typical or representative group of people because of the fact that this is remote and not a live meeting. And we did prepare the evaluation criteria, which I was going to discuss in other business later on the agenda. So it may be that you would like to discuss what your methodology is going to be for ranking and evaluating these proposals.
I think the options are, it's just speaking from experience, I think the options are open. Typically, audience members at those meetings have been people who are supporting one project or another.
Yeah.
They pack the room. I mean, I'm speaking as an applicant. You know, when I put an application in on behalf of West Somerville School, you know, I sent notices to the PTA and everybody I knew and said, come down and support the playground renovation. And, you know, we packed the room a little bit, and those folks, so it's the people who are excited about their projects that show up. And that might be the case on Zoom too, but yeah, Christina raises and Roberta raises valid points. It's a different format. It's gonna have a different feel. We're gonna have to do something else to get that input rather than like take a sticky dot and put it next to the project.
I'm trying to remember what we did last year. I mean, I know that we got a lot of testimonials that were people there on the behalf of particular projects, but I don't remember a voting.
I know that we did it. Yeah,
and it might have been more of a kind of general budget voting, like how much should go towards for fiscal blah, 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 and not so much project specific.
Yeah, you might be right that we didn't do that last time.
I've got it passed. I'm sorry, I'm
Oh, is
that
this?
was an echo on my end, I think. One thing that I have done in other communities in the past has been an online poll with an open-ended response, inviting people to submit comments in writing if they are more comfortable with that, rather than making comments live to the whole group. So that was one way that I've supplemented and a remote meeting to gather public input.
But Roberta, there are a number of tools that you can use. I don't know what's echoing, but there are a number of tools you can use online with GoTo to poll the people that are there. Can you guys hear me okay?
You're a little choppy, but yeah, we can kind of, yes.
So there
I
are
think
some GoTo polls you can use, but I don't know if it's a great idea to open it up for everyone to do, because Laura is right. People who want their project supported get people to participate in the polls or come to the meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So usually the poll has been for the public meeting in the public meeting. If we can't do it in real life, we can do it with some online polls.
Okay, maybe I can work together with staff between now and the October meeting to identify some tools for gathering live input from members of the public participating in the meeting next month.
That sounds good. And then also, just to sort of bring our attention back to the application in front of us, because we do have two people here. So if you have any questions, this is the time. I guess I would second what Arn said this earlier about this being really good use of CPA money. Kind of exciting to read about the
So I had some questions, and again, it's not because I don't support it, it's that I have questions about the application.
If everybody who's not speaking themselves, that might help.
Okay, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
1, 2, 3, that's better. And so I would recommend to make the application, so when we get applications from small nonprofits and private individuals, they tend to complete the application much more thoroughly than the city does. And so I would think that more existing photographs would be helpful. We have just the one aerial view. The draft concept is very hard to read and to locate on the site. It's a little hard to know how it fits into that Palmer Street corner. There are no letters of community support, which I think you could probably get fairly easily. And then lastly, and this is really a question of whether or not CPA can pay for this, within the budget, there is design services that are both in-house and a landscape architect. Can we pay for in-house city services?
Heather, that was never intended that we would pay for in-house city services. That would be an in-kind contribution from the city.
Okay, so then make that more clear on the budget part of your application.
Got it.
So those were really my comments on how to make that a stronger presentation and application next month.
Great, thank you. Other questions or comments on Glen Park? Okay. Next up was the Somerville Junction Park application. Also forestry, city application from PSUF.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Just back on Glen Park for a second. The application cover letter says 200,000 and then the budget says 210.
Oh, that's
So
true,
there's a
yeah.
discrepancy between the budget request and the cover letter, so I would fix that.
Thanks, Heather. I thought we had that corrected, so it must have been that the form didn't say properly. Thanks.
Okay.
Do you see Somerville Junction Park on the screen?
I do.
So either Louise and I can talk about this. This is a park that's had a great history. The site, the original Somerville Junction site, was a hazardous waste site that was overgrown with scrub growth that was converted into a park space a number of years ago with a park grant, a state park grant. This is an opportunity now to expand that site. You can see that there was a community meeting, a listening session that we held. We got a lot of ideas from the community as to what it's been. I should go back up to say that over the years, the city's had a number of requests to more fully develop this park, and there's been but part of the land has been leased for parking, and more recently it's been a GLX staging area, so it didn't make sense to pursue it until pursue the project until more recently.
The one thing that I will add that's not there is that just yesterday we received notice that we were awarded one of the park grants for $400,000 for construction.
So, and it's rightly so, that's absolutely correct. And so this is a great opportunity. And so this $100,000 is for the design of that project, for which the park grant will provide, a substantial portion of the construction funds. Speaking from a personal point of view, I've always seen this as a great opportunity. One of the things that we've talked about in the city is having the community path as sort of like a green spine, a necklace, if you will, with these jewels off to the side of it. And whether it's, Lexington Park or Ed Leathers Park or Hoyt Sullivan Park or Walnut Street Park, these are all parks that are within a block of the community path. And the ability to expand Somerville Junction Park now is a wonderful opportunity. The community path, as is described in the application, the community path goes right through Somerville Junction Park, and it was designed to be there. And the site also has an interesting history as a rail depot.
I thought it was notable also that it looks like that the landscape, that the park itself will get built there is going to be geared toward older kids, which I think is a nice touch because we can use that in this town. I guess I'm biased because my kids are 12 and 14, but I know that's true.
Yeah, I thought this application was a lot more sort of thorough, and that's great news on the park grant. I think that's fabulous. I would just say here too, it would be nice to see some of the community testimonials, whether it's people coming to the meeting or having some sort of documentation that supports the community.
We did have, Heather, over 50 people at the meeting, which was a lot. Frankly, we're just swamped with work and don't have a lot of extra time to chase after community members, but there is a lot of community support for both of these projects, and we can pursue that if it's necessary.
Or maybe just a picture of the community meeting and all those people there. But it's sort of like, we're told like, oh, there's a lot of support for this. It would just be nice to have that. I don't mean to. I feel like the private sector who's applying are very, very careful and thorough about trying to address everything on the application. And I just feel like we need to be hold the same standards to the city that we hold to the private sector.
I think it's a good idea to have that record, at least, you know, a strong public record. As Lisa said, there are several people who've supported the idea, notably among them is Councillor Niedergang, who's been advocating for this for years. So whether it would be a letter from Mark Niedergang or others, I'm sure we can, you know, provide something like that. Our community meeting was a go-to meeting, and I believe we've got a recording of that meeting, and that is on, there's a web page for this project, and I think there's a reference to that web page in the application, which would provide that documentation.
Other questions or comments? Anybody?
Yes. First of all, I just want to say that this is very encouraging to see, and I applaud the application. I do have a point of clarification. Looking at the budget on page 5, I see that there's a total eligible project cost of $1,062,000, and then the total project cost is exactly $100,000 less, and it's $962,000. And I just wanted to confirm: is the $100,000 differential linked to the design phase, or is this something different?
Roberta, do you mind scrolling to the budget page?
So that should be page 5 going to 6. Yep. So as we see, the total project cost is the $962,000.
Yeah.
And then if Roberta, if you don't mind scrolling up a little bit, a little bit further. Yep. Total eligible project cost is $1,062,000. So I'm just trying to see what the linkage there might be.
I'm sorry, I don't follow what you just said. The total eligible project grant. Yes. So that's the total budget minus the 100,000 that we're asking for the design. And the bottom one should say total construction budget.
Got it. Okay. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much.
Good.
Yeah, we will change that. Oh, it does say. Okay.
Other questions or comments on this one? Okay.
I will make one other comment, sort of jumping out what Heather mentioned before. This is just food for thought, perhaps for the next round. But I'm assuming we don't invite the other applicants to come to this meeting. And in a sense, we are sort of giving the city extra advice in their application, which maybe the other applicants aren't getting the benefit of. So just thinking about perhaps next year.
I think that's fair, Christina, but also this has never happened before. This is the first time, and I think Roberta was just trying to be extra careful. We've never had, in fact, I thought we were presenting tonight. We've never had this little extra meeting where we went through the applications, and I'm sure she has gone through it with the other applicants. Is that right, Roberta?
Are you muted?
Can you hear me? Okay. So this is an area where perhaps I'm not that familiar with the way that Somerville has done things in the past. This is the process that I've taken in other communities that I've worked on with CPA, is to have a preliminary review. And also it's unusual that Somerville has staff who serve as members of the CPC and thus are in the meeting where we have this preliminary review and question raising. So it's a little bit different situation than I've had before. And I'm not that familiar with the with the process that you have. So that's something that perhaps I can talk with Laura and Heather offline later to learn what your process ought to be going through the application review. My assumption was that your presentations would be in October.
Well, and also to Christina's point about this extra sort of inside info, if you will, I think if questions come up on the other applications from different groups, Roberta, I would think might reach out to the applicants and say, hey, you know, the committee raised this, this, and this, and kind of give them a heads up so they, you know, before the next meeting, right?
Yes, I'll be formally communicating with all of the applicants to pass on to them the questions and discussion from this meeting.
Yeah.
So Roberta, I'm not sure that anybody can give you that much history because the committee is all brand new, but I can let you know, and Arden can also chime in, that in the past, what happened was that the CPC manager spent a lot of time with each individual applicant, including us. So, you know, you were on the second floor, we were on the third. We would have a meeting to review the application, make sure everything was okay. We never had the committee look at them and then give their comments. And I don't, if you've done it that way in other communities, I understand, and we're not on the second and third floor, so can't easily speak about it. But normally the CPA manager would hold a workshop to have people's questions asked, and then go through them and make sure that their applications were as complete as possible, or if something was missing. We never had this before where the whole committee would look at it and say, there's a comma missing here.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, we'll we can look at how we do this the next time through. I jumped into the process and proceeded with the way that I'm familiar with, but I am happy to accommodate the way that things are done in Somerville, and so we'll try to coordinate going forward to try to do things in the way that best fits Somerville's model.
Okay. Unless there are other questions on the Somerville Junction application, I'm going to move it forward to the Somerville Museum.
Yep.
Oh, this is for the storage space. That's right.
Yeah. Do you see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any questions or comments on this one?
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I'm coming off as the hard ass tonight.
You are.
and I guess part of this is my question is partly a question for us internally, like how much money to date have we awarded to the Somerville Museum? And how often has it actually gone towards what we awarded it to versus being diverted to other uses? Because we awarded this money before for this use, and then it was diverted, and now we're being asked again. And it makes me have questions about management, about other funds that they have available to them. How much have we given them to date? I have all these kind of questions.
Hi, Tatiana here. So I couldn't give you a hard number off the top of my head as to how much total the CPC has given the museum. I can say that as far as I'm aware, this is the only time funds have been diverted like this to an entirely different project. I could be wrong though. Somebody please correct me if I'm incorrect if I'm not accurate in that aspect. And while I can't speak to the entire history of the museum's financial management, I do know, and I'm sure I think everybody here is aware, but I would preface this by saying I'm a volunteer for the museum in several aspects, and I work with Barbara Mangum, who is the president of the museum. I work with her not through the museum, but in her private, in the context of her private art services company. I will say over the past few years, there has been a concerted effort to drastically explore alternate funding opportunities, be they grant applications or through private individuals, though as I'm sure everyone here is aware, you often have to get money from other sources before many grant not bearing, the grant donating, you know what I mean? Organizations will actually give you money, especially if you're a smaller institution. You have to prove community investment and involvement to a certain degree before they will recognize your value independently. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
And if I understand correctly, it's completely volunteer run, right? Is Barbara a staff member or just volunteering as president?
Hi, Tatiana again. Barbara is unpaid. Over the past couple of years, they have acquired a part-time director, and for a period of time, though I don't know if this has been renewed, not my area, they did, through the donation of private funds, they have had someone on staff part-time for development work, so seeking out a broader range of grant funding opportunities. And there's also not just for curatorial or collections management or even infrastructure related things like the actual elevator, but also for programming. For example, during the course of the pandemic, they had a series of Zoom panels featuring representatives and community representatives from, for example, Somerville's Salvadoran community, the Nepalese community, looking at various immigrant groups, various ethnic minorities who have significant presence in Somerville and wish to speak about, you know, the immigrant or that specific group's experiences living in Somerville. And, you know, so there's a lot of emphasis on present day living experience of people in Somerville, as well as the historical context of Somerville's various communities.
Yes, Arden Franzen here. Just wanted to point out that I think, Heather, I think the answer to your question is on page 18 of the application. There isn't a total amount, but there's a list of the CPC, CPA funding requests over the years.
Thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. Any other questions or comments on this museum app? Okay, hearing none. Why don't we take a look at the Grace Baptist Church application, which is actually from the Somerville Hispanic Association for Community Development.
Because I actually did have one question about the Somerville Museum application,
sorry.
point of clarification. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
I'd have to go back and look at the application more fully, but my sense was that their part of the funding was to hire a collection manager and assistant. Is that correct? Were CPA funds being requested for a salary or paid position at the museum?
I will need to review again to answer that question.
Okay.
And your point is that a salaried paid position would not be eligible for CPA funding?
I'm not sure, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I'll check.
Hi, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Roberta. I don't actually know about this specific one. It's a 91-page document. I skimmed at a certain point. But I do know that the funding they originally requested for collections management, with objects coming back into the museum, they did request, and I believe they received funding not for a salaried position, but in terms of hiring I want to say an objects and a paper conservator in the short term for, I want to say at that point, the plan was they would pack and stabilize and get items cataloged appropriately for being shipped off so that the elevator construction could happen. I could be wrong. That's my memory.
The
So there
basic
is some-
budget, I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. You go.
I was gonna say, on
cleared my
page
throat.
36, there's a very basic budget of this 91-page document, and it puts all the money in the category of construction. So when I didn't read it super closely, I did skim it and catch that much. So I guess, yeah, let's leave it to Roberta to sort of confirm, but that was my understanding, is that it was construction based on that.
Thank you. I'll confirm that it's an eligible cost.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. All right, so moving on then to Grace Baptist Church.
Can you see that on my screen? Okay.
Okay.
So I'll jump in with my hard-nosed hat on, which is the budget shows 11,510 as a reimbursement for a roof project that they completed, and we cannot pay previously expended funds. So we hit this with the Peabody House when they had a storm had damaged something and they got repaired, and then we submitted it for reimbursement.
Can everybody mute again?
And at that time, hello? Okay. So at that time, we were told that that the Peabody House could not submit those funds because they had already done the repairs. They had already had the contractor do it. So I think in this application, they would have to remove the reimbursement for 157. This is distracting. Is there somebody who's on? Hello? Okay. Nope. So then I also had a question, and this would have helped if Alan was here tonight, but it's about item I and whether or not it's applicable. There is a door and a canopy. And whether or not both are approved by the Historic Commission. So the Historic Commission items. And then there was the question about lifting the floor, and I think we had asked whether there was any kind of precedence for that, Roberta, and you were gonna check into that. I don't know if you had a chance to see that. We had suspicions that it was not a part of accessibility, but if there is any kind of precedence for that, I would like to hear it, because later this will come up again where we do support the idea of reinforcing the floor on another project versus here where they want to lift it so that it's accessible to the kitchen and the entrance.
So both of the applicants, this one and going to be lifting the floor, went to the Historical Commission last month with these projects again to talk with the Historical Commission about the eligibility, the CPA eligibility, the applicability of these accessibility projects or functionality projects to historic preservation. And it was agreed at the HPC meeting last month that this project could qualify as all of the components as handicap accessibility. I'm honestly not entirely sure about item I, as item I had not been discussed at our previous meeting. I think that there was an impression that item I related to other doors and not the actual entrance to the basement. And that's why it had been left off of the discussion the last time. And that may have been a misunderstanding, and that item I, it appears, actually is going into the basement. It's part of this overall project to create an accessible entrance to the building. And so I'm not sure that item I has been reviewed by the Historical Commission, and that might need an additional review.
I think it would also be nice on their budget if they could specify the monies that they have set aside for architecture and engineering, which service phase that is. Is that like construction documents? Is that construction observation? Like kind of, is that, what is that supposed to be covering out of A&E services? What phase?
Okay.
Tatiana here. I'm looking at page 23. And I mean, I'm still, it's a little hard to envision, but item I is described as provide new door frame and hardware to replace existing door to basement from sidewalk. So I think it's part of the visible envelope. I'm not entirely clear though. Yeah, language is a little.
It's more whether they're proposing an appropriate style door to meet the historic preservation standards.
All right. Well, yeah, that isn't clear from this. So hopefully in October they can we talked to a historical preservationist architect person. Here's our photos, etc., etc. Cool.
I think in general, I'm glad that they supplied the smaller project budgets, because last year when they submitted a big project, we asked them, how could you parcel this out into smaller projects, anticipating that we won't have enough funds to fund a project of this size and have anything left over for any other people in that category. So I do think that they should continue to have a series of discrete projects that could be funded separately.
Yeah, to Heather's point, I think they actually mentioned in this application that they intend to apply for something else in 23 or next year for following year. So, any other comments or questions on this? Grace Baptist.
I have just a question for the group, which is, so in this project, they have a 15% contingency in their budget, and contingencies are good ideas, but how much of a contingency, like, because in a way that's sort of like soft money that we don't really know where it's going. What do we feel is the appropriate contingency to have on CPA projects?
The important, go ahead.
Sorry.
Typically, the amount of contingency that I've seen varies among different projects, but you want to ensure that you're asking for sufficient money to be able to complete the project, and any funds that are left over will be returned to the reserve that they came from when the project is completed.
I think that within their smaller discrete projects, the contingencies should be built into each one of those smaller discrete projects, so it's identifiable versus being on this like larger slice of the pie or something like that.
Okay.
Just as a general reference, as somebody who's done a fair bit of construction, I wouldn't want to go forward with a project without having a contingency in place. But I think that if there's a way at the completion of the project to return any extra funds, any unspent funds, that would be the language you want to make sure was included.
Tatiana here. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the language normally is. I'm blanking, but I do think the general process is that if there's money left over in the contingency fund, that it does go back into the CPC's pot. I mean, I vaguely remember an Elizabeth Peabody House project where that was the case, and there was a portion of the contingency fund that came back to us. I don't know if it went straight back into historic preservation or if it went into the flexible pot or whatever, but yeah, there is some kind of process in place for that already, as far as I'm aware.
Maybe a follow-up question there that we want to confirm with Alan and Osseo. I don't know if Alan is coordinating the budgets for these projects, then he may have some ideas as to how to handle that.
Okay.
So, any other questions or comments on the Chris Baptist application? Okay, I think we're down to the last one then, which is 1783 Adams Lagoon House. It's a historic preservation application.
Can you see that?
Yep. And there was a note on your cheat sheet that said that might still be incomplete.
Yes. So this application is still incomplete because I am working with the applicant to obtain services of a preservation consultant who can answer some of the outstanding questions that we need in order to complete their application and to help them to identify appropriate contractors who can provide a proper estimate to go with this application.
So I would like to know from the, I guess, the Historic Commission or from Alan, when we hear this, whether or not we can do all 22 windows out of the CPC monies. We've had private individuals apply in the past, and we've told them that we can only do public faces and not entire envelopes or sides of the house that do not face the public or something. So I would, when it comes time to hear this, I would like to have a little intro or something from Alan so we can understand the scope that would be. Actually, that's not even a Historic Commission question. That's like a CPC question. Are we allowed to fund the non-public faces of a private individual home? with the CPC funds.
That's a good question. That's a question that I can discuss with staff as well.
I'm sorry, I haven't looked at this application in detail. Has the Historic Commission said that the Pella windows that are proposed are historically appropriate?
We don't know yet. I'm
We
sorry.
Yeah. We don't know yet. The applicant had originally had, as well, they were preparing their eligibility determination form, had 3 estimates provided, but but 2 out of the 3 were from contractors who would not be able to provide windows and complete the project to satisfy the requirements of the HPC. One of them might be able to. That's the one that I've included here. But so this is at the moment a sample estimate, but we're directing the applicant to have a more thorough analysis of what is the work that needs to be done on the house, and then to be able to obtain estimates based on that analysis.
I have another question, which is a process question, which I don't think we've articulated yet, which is, so for example, this house is on the National Register versus a local register. So does that, I would think that maybe that means that we can treat it with a different kind of sense of importance, or maybe more of that building envelope than we would if it was not on the National Register. So that's a question for, I don't know who can answer that question, but it's the fact that it's on the National Register, can we then handle it differently and judge it differently than we would otherwise?
I think that I can, go ahead.
Sorry, I was only going to say, wow, I can't think of off the top of my head any other houses that where the any other buildings where the envelope is on the National Historic Register. Somerville Museum does have a significant architectural fragment, the Bulfinch Staircase, that is on the National Historic Register, and we've never discussed a higher prioritizing of the Somerville Museum's funding request due to that. That being said, the structure. Maybe that changes the conversation.
The church that's on the top of Broadway that we funded the re-roofing project of is on the National Register, and it was definitely a big part of why we were so interested in helping them get the slate roof repaired and go whole hog on that project.
I can obtain some input from a few different sources to ask for opinions about how much of this project would be eligible based on the criteria of this house. And the fact that the condition would be consistent with other historic preservation projects that you've done. The condition would be that they put a preservation restriction on the whole house in exchange for the CPA funding for this project. And that is a public benefit in and of itself as well. So based on all of those factors, I can ask for an opinion from different parties about whether this is going to be eligible or how much of it will be eligible.
And I think also, just as a point of education, it's not just the house that is open to preservation funds. For example, if they wanted to restore the wall or the fencing or other, like the grounds associated with the house, that would be applicable. And it would be good to let the applicant know to think more broadly, perhaps, about what preservation is.
You guys aren't, again,
True, but their priority.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, Arn, you go ahead. My bad. Sorry.
I know that the application includes a proposal, one proposal. My gut from a background in construction is that this price is very low for the scope of work that you're talking about. I mean, it's one thing to buy a window and to, if everything goes right, to be able to put it in, but there is, every window requires changes to the, the trim on the inside, outside, plastering on the inside, something to do with the siding on the outside. I think you need a more detailed estimate of the work. I can't imagine that you can do this many windows for the cost that they're talking about, not in today's market.
We have a bit of feedback to share with the applicant, Roberta.
Yes, thank you. And this is all actually great feedback for me as well this evening. Helps me understand better what you're looking for and how your process works. So,
Any other questions or comments on the Magoon House application?
I was just gonna say, I do remember an early meeting last year where we asked people to break their projects into smaller chunks. Was that, and there was a non-voting meeting. Was that not a similar meeting to this?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're asking when you say was it not a?
Well, we were saying earlier that we don't usually have this preliminary pre grant applicant presentation where we discuss the applicants, but I think we actually did. And I remember going back to them and suggesting that we get these smaller defined projects because we were concerned about the number of applicants and exceeding the budget.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a recent development with COVID. It seemed like there was an increased number of requests or greater amount of money asked for in many cases. And given the comparatively limited size of the pot to divvy up organizations, I think we did ask last year. I can't remember when, but we did ask people to break things down a little bit so that we could at least fund part of the project rather than none.
You may well be right. I am not great at recalling detail like that, to be honest.
it would also behoove me to actually review your historical minutes. And it's been such a whirlwind since I've been here that I haven't had the chance to do that yet. So I may be able to answer that question myself, not having the institutional memory to be able to just point the way for me. So yeah, I mean, we don't have to, if something works, we don't have to change it. Or if we want to evolve to a different way of doing things, we can do that as well. So I'll follow your lead.
Again, I think that they're probably tired of hearing my thoughts on everything. I'm taking after Heather. I think that it's important that the application is complete. You don't want to go into, they're gonna present their ideas and their budget. But if their application truly isn't complete in terms of the details of the cost and how they're gonna go ahead, and if they don't have full knowledge of the procedure, then I think that the CPC members need to think about that. If it's not complete this year, maybe they need additional time and they want to resubmit next year. But I don't think it's reasonable to go in to approve an application where you don't have enough detail to warrant its approval. So, my thoughts.
That's a reasonable point. This is just a broader thing. I know breaking down the funding within a project wasn't sort of standard practice when I started, but I have to say, I really do like it because inevitably it seems every year there's at least one category in which we just flat out do not have enough money to fund everything in full. And so knowing which projects funded in full or nothing can happen versus which projects we could give something towards at the bare minimum so that the project could keep moving forwards. I like it because before we had that, it didn't feel quite as, it felt a little arbitrary sometimes when we were like, okay, we're going to reduce funding to A, B, and C projects by X, Y, and Z amounts. We were doing our best, but having hard numbers as, you know, oh, we can fund part 1 and part 2, can't quite make part 3, so we'll just fund part 1 and part 2 in full. I prefer it. I know, and I think it helps make things, I don't know, fair is the right word, but it feels a little more based in hard numbers than what we can squeeze out of a stone. I don't know, losing myself to metaphors here.
I will just make a note on the minutes thing. I did just quickly look online to see if I could see the minutes from last October and if we had, or September, if we had similar discussions. And the minutes aren't posted for the past year at least. So, and I know that's the same with the Conservation Commission, so it may just be a webmaster thing, but that's another thing that we should be doing, is making sure our minutes are up to date.
Agreed.
Okay, a lot of food for thought there from everybody. Thank you. I'm all echoey now. Unless there are other comments on the Magoon House, I'm going to move us to the next agenda item, which, Roberta, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this should be taken off, or it's going to be quick if we keep it on. This is number 3, the off-cycle supplemental funding request. Oh, Roberta, you're muted, I think.
Sorry about that. So I will promote Nadia Dixon, who is the staff person who is prepared to provide us with an update on this project.
Can you just repeat the beginning of what you said? I think we all missed it.
Yeah, I'm promoting Nadia Dixon, who is the staff person who submitted the memorandum on this project. Are you there, Nadia?
Yeah, I just needed someone to give me permission to unmute myself, and apparently I can do that now.
Yes.
So I'm actually here to withdraw this request. We, due to my unfamiliarity with our accounting system, it turns out we spent less on mold remediation for this project, and so we have the funds to cover the amount that we went over in scanning. We underestimated the total number of pages in the scanning project. But since I'm here, I would be happy to answer quickly any questions you all have about where we are currently with the project. I know that this is a much more extended time frame than what we had originally planned for. If you read the memorandum, you can see that a lot of that was pandemic related and just Murphy's Law. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask.
Just to, for those of you who might not have heard at the top of the hour, the archivist is withdrawing the request for additional funding because it was found that there actually is sufficient funds on the grant to cover the project, just moving from one element that was under, that came in under budget to be able to cover this element that came in over budget. So with that, any questions or on Nadia's update.
No, thank you, Nadia, for attending.
Thank you.
Happy to hear you found the money because something came under. Congrats.
Okay, if that is it, I am going to have dinner. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nadia, for attending. Okay. I think Nadia is left. Laura, would you like me to
I'm
move to the
sorry,
next item?
yes, I'm sorry. I was muted and forgot. Would you like to present your report?
Sure. So I just wanted to review a few things that I've been working on in the last month, and with an invitation to comment and provide feedback and suggestions about things that you would like me to be working on. Within the last month, I'm excited to say that we've submitted to the City Council for signing 2 preservation restrictions for historic preservation projects that were funded in prior rounds, including the Elizabeth Peabody House at 277 Broadway and the Grace Baptist Church at 59 Cross Street. These are the first 2 preservation restrictions out of all of the projects that CPA has funded so far in Somerville to make it this far into the process. So circulating for signatures with the city is the last step in the process before they're approved by the Mass Historic Commission and then filed at the registry. We also have a few more applications that are close behind this in the process. So congratulations to the CPC in almost having preservation restrictions finally filed. Secondly, I've been continuing to work on public outreach, which we'll talk about in the next agenda item. So I won't go into that right now. Have been familiarizing myself with procedures, assisting applicants and grant recipients through the process. And as I do this, I'm considering ways that we might be able to simplify process in the next round to make it more accessible. And I'm very much interested in hearing your feedback as we go through, as well as grant recipients' feedback about how we can make the process work better for everyone. And finally, I've been working on submitting annual reporting to the state about the projects that we've carried out over the past year and our funding picture overall, and also making a look back at all of the projects that we've funded to date. So trying to help myself develop a historical picture of what the CPA has done over time. In case you aren't aware, the Department of Revenue and the Community Preservation Coalition at the state both maintain databases with useful information about every CPA community, which you can find online. If you can't find it yourself, ask me. I can help you locate data information if you're looking for it about Somerville or anywhere. So that's what I wanted to report this evening.
Thanks for that.
Yep. Are you speaking, Laura? Or are you?
How about now? Can you hear me now? Oh, yeah. Too much. I was asking if anybody had questions on the report. And if not, I was going to suggest you move on to present about the community engagement. Now I
I'm
think you
preparing
might
to
be.
share screen. So over the past few weeks, we've had several community events that we've tabled at. I provided in the meeting packet some pictures so that you can see what we've been doing. And I am going to share screen to show some of the results that we've received to date. Actually, before I do that, I wanted to maybe just talk a little bit about what we've experienced, and maybe you can jump in, those of you who have participated in these tabling events so far. We've had a lot of interest in coming by the table and talking about CPA projects that we've done in the past and what people would like to see in the future. There's a lot of actually consistency that we've seen across the groups about what the priorities have been for projects. Some people are really attracted by the idea of voting on what they'd like to see in the future. Some people have interacted a lot with the photo album that I've provided because they're interested in seeing how their CPA funds have been used in the past, or to have better ideas about kind of illustrations of what CPA projects could be. Just the names of the categories even understand what it is. So that's been my experience. What would you say, Heather, Laura, and Tatiana?
Hi, this is Heather. I'd say that the book you put together of example projects was really great because it really did help to educate people and to engage them. So that was a fantastic add to the tabling. And then I think on your tally we need to correct my tally because it was very quiet at the Mystic Housing.
Oh,
And,
you're right.
Yeah, and so I can tell you those numbers.
I and somehow didn't update the numbers, so those are the numbers copied from the column above.
So the open space and rec was 11. Historic preservation was 9. And affordable housing 19.
Thank you.
And Tatiana was like the hands down, get them to vote queen. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So congratulations there.
Yeah,
What was your trick?
thanks. I tapped into all those Jewish hand card pushers in my history. Sorry, Laura, I cut you off.
I was just asking Tatiana what she did that was so successful to get people to vote, because I couldn't always.
Well, I emphasize the voting aspect. I think there's a strong interest in, I think, voting is sort of like a nice trigger word for people right now, and that we must vote, we must participate on the local level, especially, for Democrats. And we're in a very, not exclusively, but we're in a fairly progressive city. So a lot of people are Democrats or independents that are like, must vote more. So, but also, I really did try to emphasize that this is something we take into account. They're not just voting for funsies. I didn't say funsies, I promise. The idea that their input would have real world implications, and that we consider this as part of how we determine our funding allocations, which is accurate and I think is a good thing to do. But I guess also I'm very good at pitching my voice so that it projects, but I'm not shouting. I think it comes with being the oldest of 5 children, so I'm not sure. But yeah, so that was a big part of it. Just emphasize that the impact, that they were having impact voting, emphasize that, that they were voting. And so yeah, no, that was pretty much it. And make sure they can hear you. I don't have any great secrets
Okay.
to reveal there, but yeah. And have a spiel, have a quick spiel, like basically have an elevator pitch, because not everybody can stay for very long. Everybody's there to shop, everybody's there to get their food. They're willing to stop and listen to you for a little while, but if you take too long, they will be like, sorry, I have to go. So have a good elevator pitch for what CPC is and why it's important. Yeah.
One of the things that I found is that people often only want to put one sticker on the board, and whatever their one favorite thing is, they'll put a sticker on that. And I would tell them that we have a lot of money to spend and we need to spread it around. So help us, spend all of the money. So encouraging them. And I cut back to, instead of 10 stickers giving them, I gave them 5 stickers to spread around, which helped with being overloaded with so many votes. And I think we still got, by percentages, we still got about the same kind of results that we would have gotten with 10 stickers. I was also contemplating, based on perhaps Laura might concur with the difficulty of actually managing the stickers on the board. I'm contemplating getting little magnet pins that can go on the board. I have mixed feelings about the magnets, so if any of you had strong feelings about switching to magnets instead of stickers for vote taking, I'd be happy to go either way.
What's the downside of the magnets for you, Roberta?
Easier for people to walk off with, and we have to keep a close eye on children because it could potentially be a choking hazard for children. Whereas I did have some children who came up and took a tab of stickers and just stuck them on their forehead. So that was their fun way of engaging with our table. And so, that's something that you can't do with magnets.
Right. I noticed more foot traffic at the Tab building in North Street, I thought, by a little bit, not by 10. And affordable housing does always seem to be the biggest winner in terms of the votes. Couple things. Ed?
I would just add, for the people who haven't tabled yet, that there is stuff in the box about affordable housing, because you will get questions about that. So being able to have some affordable housing resources that you can point them to is good. Otherwise, you're just kind of like, whoa. But Roberta's got it all together there in the box.
So my last question would be regarding the calendar, which I've included in the meeting packet again, whether anyone else would like to put themselves on the calendar for any dates. You can tell me now or send me an email later and let me know when you'd be available.
Let's see. The calendar's in the engagement folder, outreach folder, I mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have it shared on the screen right now.
All right, okay, thanks. This is, all right. Am I talking?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on this? Do people want to just get back to Roberta?
All right.
I had
And
some other
I just,
outreach questions. Sorry.
yes,
Go
ahead.
From an earlier, it came up in the minutes where there was a discussion about like posting signs or curb markers, the language liaisons and social media. Are any of these items still sort of things we want to pursue? How do we want to pursue them?
Yes, I can provide an update. I've been working on social media. I'm still working on obtaining the permission to create our own Facebook page. And I'm only prepared to manage a Facebook page in terms of social media, which I think could be effective. So that's something I'm working on. Next on that I feel I would be helpful for me to do is to do some direct outreach to stakeholders, but I'm going to wait until this public outreach season is wrapping up because it will be a time commitment for me to start that stakeholder outreach. So I figured that I would focus on the public outreach during this season when there are a lot of events going on, and then move to stakeholder outreach. And I haven't yet reached out to the language liaisons yet, other than asking them to provide us with translations of materials. But that is also something that I can undertake when I do the stakeholder outreach as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions about engagement?
Do we want to be posting signs, and are we going to ask people who we award monies to post signs?
Yes, that is actually already a condition of the grants that you've given in the past. And as part of my review of the project status of all of the projects, which is something that I'm trying to get on top of, I will be looking to see that they have all posted signs as a condition of receiving the last holdback funds that we hold in their grants. So in terms of having project signs, we'll make sure that there are project signs at every location. Curb markers is something that, again, I will move down the road as something that I can look into when I have more time to take care of that. In Medford, we're designing curb markers that we can put on the sidewalk in front of CPA locations throughout the city. And if that's something that would be agreeable to the departments who are in charge of the public ways in Somerville, that's something that we could consider for Somerville as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on behind the
Yeah.
scenes. All right. Now, I am trying to sort of make a habit of opening it up to public comment at the end in case anybody filters in. I'm thinking that it looks like nobody else has. So I'm going to give over that to other business. Ask if there's any other business.
I have a few more things to report. First of all, just a reminder, if I may. A reminder that tomorrow, I'm sorry, not tomorrow, next week, Tuesday, 9/28 at 12 p.m. is the Community Preservation Coalition's boot camp, which is a remote training session for anybody who's interested in CPA. It's highly recommended for committee members, especially if you've never attended one of these trainings before, as well as for city staff, prospective applicants, and community partners. It really helps you to learn the nuts and bolts of how CPA works. So that will be next week, and I sent everyone the notice about it. You can register for it through that notice, and please feel free to also forward it to anyone you know who might be interested in that information. Second thing, also next Tuesday is a ribbon cutting for the Healy School Playground at 2 p.m. So you can let me know or just show up if that's something that you would like to attend. Thirdly, I wanted to mention again the evaluation criteria. I mentioned earlier in the evening at our previous meeting, I had handed out some draft evaluation criteria, which committee members agreed that you would like to use internally to help make a decision between the applicants in the funding round. But you had expressed that you'd like to make some modifications to this draft criteria to better reflect Somerville's needs and priorities. So if you could, I haven't received any written feedback on this yet. So if you could, please review those evaluation criteria and send me your feedback so that I can have a more final draft prepared for you at your next meeting. And certainly I understand would your process normally be that you have the presentations in October and then you have deliberation and vote in November? Is that your usual process?
That's right.
Okay, so then we definitely hope to have the evaluation criteria finalized, at least in terms of your internal use of them for the November meeting. And then the final thing I wanted to bring up, you may not have seen this because I just put it in the meeting packet this afternoon, but I would also welcome your feedback. I've prepared a new template for annual reports from the Affordable Housing Trust. You've had a template that you've used that I understand was adopted and approved by the committee originally, however many years ago that was. And in reading reports from the Affordable Housing Trust that are posted on their webpage, I felt that it would be easier to find the information that we would be looking for if we were to reorganize those reports and split it into two different reports, one for spring and one for fall, that cover different material that's applicable to where they are in their application timeline. So I put this together, and given that it wasn't on the agenda, it's certainly not something to have a lot of discussion about. If you all were fine with telling me to just go ahead and give it to them, then I would do that tomorrow. But if you would like to have more opportunity to provide input, we can, please, I need to send it to them before the next meeting so that they can actually prepare a fall report. Or I can just have them use the old format for the fall report and switch to the new format in the spring, if you would prefer to discuss the application, the annual report format. And just for your information, their timeline is that they're issuing their RFPs in October and are awarding their grants in March. So it's a little bit opposite what our timeline is for our application process. Would you like me to share the screen to take a quick look at it, or what would you like to do with those?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to share the screen. Because
Okay, I'm pulling it up now. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So between the two reports, the spring and fall reports, it covers all of the material that was in your previous template and even a little bit more material that wasn't included in the previous template. So in the fall report, because they're going to be issuing RFPs in the fall report is focused on providing a picture of funding availability and the goals for using CPA or AHT funds to inform prospective applicants and community partners, as well as to give a report to the CPC. And then the spring report would be coming back to the CPC to inform our group about the projects that were funded this year and to provide updates on previously funded projects.
This is Heather. Do you know how they feel about dividing it in two? Like, have you had any preliminary? I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
I did have a discussion with them about this, and they liked the idea of splitting it in two, especially because we were using the same format for both the spring and fall, which is a bit repetitive. And the fall format came at a time when they hadn't received any applications yet, because they're about to issue the RFP. So, it really didn't, there wasn't always new information to provide.
I think it makes a lot of sense to align the report with their process, and to have the fall report and the spring report. So I would say we can continue looking at the spring report because it has more details, but perhaps go ahead and issue the fall report, which is more general, and I would trust you that it's sort of covering the material that was in the old report adequately between the two of them. I guess I make a motion to accept the fall report and to send it on to the Affordable Housing Trust for them to be able to use for this year's fall report. And then we will send them the spring report at a later time soon, but.
I'll second that, Christina.
I'm sorry, I was muted, didn't realize it. I'll take a quick vote. Tatiana?
The audio went short, but yeah, I'm a little tired. Yes, I'm
Okay.
willing to look at the two.
And Eleanor?
Yes.
Okay. And Jahan?
Yes.
And I think that's everybody. Okay, motion passed. So Roberta, was any other announcements there? Other business?
That is all of my other business.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I missed some of it. That is all?
That's everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, all right, our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, October 27th at 6:30. It'll be go-to. Unless there's anything else anyone has to add to the other business, I'll suggest somebody make a motion to adjourn.
Sure,
I'm so sorry. I have one last question on the evaluation form,
Okay.
which is, I'm sorry, which is we asked them in the evaluation criteria, we say one of them is like aligning with summer vision, but on the applicants, we never asked the applicants how they're, it's like, I'm just wondering, are we like kind of doing that subjectively, like, yes, this aligns, or are we asking people specifically to address that as a criteria, or is that a fair criteria to have in the evaluation form?
That's a
Or
good
a useful
question.
one?
That's a good question. You may want to save that criteria for next year, and we can align the application form itself with the criteria. Since that was one of the reasons why you opted at your last meeting to only use this internally this year rather than sharing it with the applicants, because it's kind of bringing it on at the last minute without having really integrated it with the application process from the outset. So yeah, if you would prefer to think about this criteria in terms of what's appropriate this year, and give me comments about that, and then we can come back and refine the criteria for next year, that would make a lot of sense.
Okay, and Roberta, you said that you're still hoping to hear feedback from folks. I know
Yes.
I'm guilty there, and I will try to look at this and send you something.
Yeah.
And others can as
So
well.
when you give me feedback, you can think about it just in terms of what will help you in November this year,
Okay.
not forever. And we'll come back and think about it again for the long term at a later date.
Okay, that's helpful now. Good. Okay. Try the motion to adjourn again. How about?
I just wanted to say one thing. This is actually my last meeting. I'm moving out of the city, so I'm leaving the Conservation Commission. So we'll be meeting next week and we'll discuss a replacement. But just wanted to say a pleasure being on the committee, and I really appreciate all the work everyone does. And I'm very sorry that it's been virtual, so we haven't gotten to know each other more, but it's been great.
Thank you. Pleasure to work with you too. Thanks for your time and effort.
You'll be missed, Christina.
Yeah.
I've heard the same thing from staff with regards to the Conservation Commission as well. So yes, you will be missed.
Okay.
And I guess
Anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Okay, somebody second it?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I'm gonna call it adjourned 8:27 on September 22nd, officially. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.